because I think it's the first time in maybe 2, maybe 3 years that we've been able to be here as a board all together present. So I want to say thank you guys for joining and for making the efforts whenever you couldn't be here, that you still participated virtually. So grateful for that. So I'm going to go ahead and have the roll be called.
Yes, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, Lieutenant Governor Howie Morales,
Present.
State Treasurer Laura Montoya, Member Michael Sanchez,
I'm here.
Member Michael Cassidy, Paul Cassidy, I'm sorry.
Good morning, Judith.
Good morning.
Present.
Thank you. Member Wendy Trevisani,
Present.
Member Joseph Lujan.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, and I think I spoke too soon. We hope that the treasurer, Montoya, starts feeling better, and she wasn't able to join us today, but nonetheless, I want to thank you for her contributions as well. But we'll go ahead and ask the approval of agenda. I'm gonna turn it over to you actually to make sure that there aren't any changes to the agenda.
Governor, we have no changes. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion for approval? Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The agenda's been approved. We'll go on to item number 3. That's going to be approval of the minutes. I would move approval, Counter. We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The minutes have been approved. Before we go into today's consent agenda, I do want to remind those who are participating virtually to ensure that you state your name as you present, as well as our presenters who are here in the rooms. Please state your name for the record. All microphones to be placed on mute, as well as all phones. So with that, I'd like to yield to Cabinet Secretary for an introduction.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, members of the board. It's nice to see everybody this morning. And before I forget, I think I can say this on behalf of all the staff at DFA. We wish you and your families a very safe and happy Thanksgiving. Pleasure to introduce DFA's new general counsel, Mr. George Hippolyte. George joined us about 3 weeks ago, and he seems to be coming back every day. So we think he's going to stick around for a while. He came to us from not too far away. He was in Colorado, so a bit of a drive south for him. But in addition to being an excellent attorney, George has significant financial and infrastructure legal experience, which is not easy to find. And so we feel very fortunate that we did find him, and that he's joined the staff here at DFA. And he will make himself available to board members at any time you need anything from DFA. Feel free to reach out to him. Thank you for allowing me to make that introduction.
Great. Thank you, Secretary, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. We'll go ahead and jump into today's consent agenda items. That's going to be items 4 through 21. Now yield to Ashley to guide us through that.
Yes, Lieutenant Governor, members, beginning on page 424 of your electronic board books, we do have the consent agenda. These action items have been reviewed, and I will read through them now. So we begin with several items that have been submitted by the Higher Education Department on behalf of some of our higher education institutions. Item number 4 comes from the New Mexico Highlands University, requesting approval of capital expenditures for construction of a student wellness center for $1,125,000. Item number 5 is from New Mexico State University. NMSU is requesting approval of capital expenditures for replacement of the Corona Hay Barn for $592,322.79. Item number 6 from NMSU is a request to spend $754,045.35, and this is for capital expenditures for upgrades to the women's soccer field. Item 7 from NMSU is a request for approval of capital expenditures for renovation of Anderson Hall. This is for $2,850,000. Item number 8 from NMSU is a request to spend $3.8 million for the addition to the Aggie Innovation Space Engineering Complex 1. Item number 9 from NMSU is a request for capital expenditures for phase 3 renovations to the agricultural science centers for a total of 4 million. Item number 10 from NMSU Doña Ana Community College is a request for approval of capital expenditures for the replacement of the Gadsden Center roof for 1.2 million. Item 11 is from NMSU's Alamogordo campus, requesting approval of revised capital expenditures for the Reidlinger Science Center HVAC upgrades for $3,727,809. Item number 12 has been submitted by CNM, Central New Mexico Community College. This is a request for approval of an amendment to the lease of real property located at 5816 Isleta Southwest in Albuquerque to the University of New Mexico's Early Childhood Services Center. This would be for $24,786.36 per year. If approved, approval would be contingent on the directors and council's receipt and review of a fully executed lease agreement. Items number 13 and 14 have been submitted by Santa Fe County. Item number 13 is a request for approval of an amendment to the lease of real property located at 2600 Galisteo Road in Santa Fe to Paul Thompson and Associates for $3,048.68 per month. This approval would be contingent upon the directors and council's receipt and review of a fully executed amendment to the lease. Item 14 from Santa Fe is a request for approval of the lease of real property located at 2145 Caja del Oro Grant Road in Santa Fe to La Familia Medical Center for $204,901 per year. If approved, approval would be contingent upon staff's receipt and review of a fully executed lease agreement. Item number 15 has been submitted by Cooperative Educational Services. CES is requesting approval of the lease of real property located at 1451 Innovation Parkway Southeast, Suite 200 in Albuquerque, to OptiPlus Inc. For $47,835 per year. If approved, approval would be contingent upon staff's receipt of a fully executed lease agreement and approved minutes and or a resolution from the CES Governing Board. Item number 16 has been submitted by McKinley County. The county is requesting approval of the Fourth Amendment to the lease of real property located at 1900, 1901, and 1910 Red Rock Drive in Gallup with Rehoboth McKinley Christian Healthcare Services. This would be for $2,115,976 per year with services in lieu of cash rent contemplated. If approved, approval would be contingent upon the directors and council's receipt and review of a revised and fully executed Fourth Amendment to the lease. Item number 17 has been submitted by Hidalgo County. Hidalgo is requesting approval of the sale of real property located at Old Highway 70 in Lordsburg to Gerald Rock and Max Energy LLC for $185,000. If approved, the sale would be contingent upon a fully executed purchase agreement and a fully executed quitclaim deed being received and reviewed by staff. Item number 18 has been submitted by the Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department. They are requesting approval of the Second Amendment to the concession contract with Christie Sports LLC for the ski shop at Hyde Memorial State Park. If approved, approval would be contingent upon the directors and council's receipt and review of fully executed Second Amendment to the concession contract. Items 19, 20, and 21 have been submitted by staff. Item number 19 is consideration of the contract with Clifton Larson Allen for investment policy and compliance review and delegation to council and staff to complete negotiations and revisions to that contract. Item number 20, which can be found on page 830 of your board packets, is a Board of Finance meeting schedule for calendar year 2024. We are maintaining that our board meetings be held the third Tuesday of each month, with the exceptions of January, April, and August. April and August, we won't have a meeting, and in January, our meeting will be held on Thursday, January 16th. Right before the beginning of the legislative session. And item number 21 is the private activity bond cap allocation 2024 expiration date, which has been set at December 17th, 2024. And that memorandum from Deputy Director Trujillo can be found on page 832 of your board packets. And with that, Mr. Chair, members, I yield.
Good job, Ashley. Yeah, that was a lot of. Any questions from any member of the board? No questions? Any additional information from staff?
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that that you're aware as far as the contingency list that has been placed on your desk as well. Quite the list there, so I know that there's going to be some follow-up with that. So thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion for contingency items number 4 to 21.
I'll move approval.
We have approval. We have a second. We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Consent agenda items 4 through 28 have been approved. We'll go on to the next portion of the agenda, since I can find it. We'll go to informational items, and Ashley, I believe you're gonna take us through that, is that correct?
Excuse me, yes, Mr. Chair, members. So I will take these one by one, Mr. Chair. If that works. So on page 835, you'll see item number 22, which has been submitted by the General Services Department. This is the Capital Buildings Repair Fund Financial Status Report for the month ended October 31st, 2024. For October, GSD expended 29.6 million out of a total almost 40 million in awards across 32 projects. Revenues into the fund for October totaled 1.6 million and expenditures totaled $439,343. The fund balance for fiscal year 24 to date was 39.3 million, with about 24.5 million uncommitted. As board members will recall, GSD does report on all of the awards, as well as provides a narrative on some of the specific projects underway, which have been included in the board packets and will be made available on the board site following the meeting. GSD owns and manages approximately 45% of all state buildings and land. And the Capital Buildings Repair Fund comprises funds from an allocation of the land grant permanent fund of 1.11%. With that, Mr. Chair, I will stand for the questions.
Thank you, Ashley. Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, we'll go ahead and go on to the next item.
So item number 33, Mr. Chair and members, is also submitted by GSD. This is the Legislative Capital Projects Financial Status Report for the month ended October 31st, 24. This can be found on page 839 of your board packets. For October, there were a total of $155,441,065 expended out of a total about $363.5 million in total appropriations that GSD oversees. The expenditures increased over the month by about $5 million. The report identifies all capital outlay projects overseen by GSD and for which GSD has received capital appropriations. And they have included a narrative within their packet that's included in your packet on some of the projects that were completed and work that had been done in October. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Ashley. Are there any questions on informational item number 23? Seeing no questions, we'll go on to the next item.
Mr. Chair and members, item 24 has been submitted by the State Treasurer's Office. This is the investment report for the month ended September 30th, 2024. I know that Vicki is going to be presenting the quarterly report shortly, so I'm sure she'll be providing much more color. But you can find the full report on page 845 of your board packets, which provides a variety of activity conducted by STO, including compliance reporting, general fund cash projections, investment portfolio summaries, state agency deposit balances, and a report on collateral on agency deposits and CDs. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Any questions on item number 24? No questions, we'll go on to the next item.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 25 is the emergency balances as of today. We have $3,573,700 out of a total $4 million for the operating reserve fund and the full $109,900 for the emergency water fund. You can see the report on page 982 of your packets. They reflect the awards to date for this fiscal year, which includes $366,000 made to the Village of Columbus in September and about $60,300 made to Cañada de los Alamos Mutual Domestic Water Consumers Association in October. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Are there any questions on emergency fund balance? I had a quick question on that. Ashley, coming into the next legislative session, is $4 million going to be the request, or are we going to increase that request?
Mr. Chair, I believe that DFA has increased that request to $6 million.
Thank you.
So moving on to item number 26, Mr. Chair and members, this is the fiscal agent and custodial bank fees report. It has been placed at 984 in your board packets. The Board of Finance continued to realize negative net fees for fiscal agent and treasury services driven by a 2.5% earnings credit rate. Gross fees prior to the application of the earnings credit totaled about $92,300. Which was about 7% higher than in September, but we do see that type of fluctuation in those fees. But again, we are not paying fees because of that earnings credit that's been applied. The custodial bank fees, which vary minimally from month to month, totaled $13,894 for September, which is the most recent month for which we've been invoiced. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll stand for question.
Thank you, Ashley. Are there any questions on that informational item? Seeing no questions, we'll go on to the next item.
Mr. Chair, item number 27 is the DFA approved joint powers agreements report for the month ended of October 31st, 2024. This is on page 987 of your board packets. DFA approved one JPA in October between the State Treasurer's Office and Housing New Mexico, also known as Mortgage Finance Authority, for investment of the Housing Trust Fund in the local government investment pool. With that, Mr. Chair, I understand questions.
Thank you, Ashley. Any questions? Seeing no questions, we'll go on to the next item.
Yes, item 28, Mr. Chair and members, is the quarterly report for the first quarter of fiscal year 25 for the New Mexico Mortgage Finance Authority Housing Trust Fund earmark. This is on page 989 of your board packets. As of the first quarter of fiscal year 25, MFA has issued procurement for 100% of the awarded amounts for FY24's earmark, which is $37.53 million. They have awarded $34.9 million of that, so about 93%, and expended about 49%, or $18.4 million. They've also begun to report the fiscal year 25 earmark allocation that was received through the June 2024 note issuance. They have procured 100% of that amount received, which is $34.62 million, and they've awarded that full amount as well. Excuse me. They've expended about 8%, which is what would be expected, as they've had that money for less than 6 months. So activity has occurred within the following certified uses per the report provided by Mortgage Finance Authority. That includes down payment assistance, single family emergency repairs, accessibility, energy efficiency improvements and rehabilitation, and rental and single family development. And I believe the majority of the expenditures have been in the down payment assistance. Mortgage Finance Authority, Housing New Mexico is here to be and giving a presentation a little later in the agenda as well. So I'm sure they would be happy to answer any questions on that specifically.
Thank you. Any questions on this item? We'll be getting some more detailed information in a bit. Is that correct?
Hi.
Seeing no questions, we'll go on to item number 29.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 29 is the staff report on the finalization of negotiations and contract execution of the sole source contract with American Express. The board approved the contract with delegation to make final changes last month. We right now have only had one change to the contract, which is we finalized the term to end December 1st, 2030. So a 6-year term that will align with the fiscal agent contract. This contract is still being reviewed by the General Services Department, but we don't anticipate really any changes from that, and we will be executing it the day before Thanksgiving, if all goes well. With that, I'll stand.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you for taking us to those informational items, Ashley. We'll go on to the State Treasurer's Office. Vicky, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Having me. Good morning. My name is Vicki Hanges. I'm from the State Treasurer's Office. And I'm reporting for the quarter ended September 30th, 2024. At the end of September, the State Treasurer's Office managed $16.6 billion in assets versus $17.3 billion at the end of June. The general fund paid out $1.2 billion to the early childhood fund in August, and that was what brought the balance slightly lower over the quarter. Actually, our next anticipated payout is next week, $665 million in excess oil and gas reserves, and that will go over to SIC. And then our next payout for the general fund will be at the end of January. So for the quarter, the portfolios earned $186 million in income and actually produced unrealized gains of $172 million for a total amount of $358 million earned for the quarter. And that is versus 100 and no, that's not correct. We earned $358 million over the quarter, And looking at last year's full fiscal year earnings for fiscal year 2024, it was 778 million. So in one quarter, we've almost produced 50% of what the portfolios earned last year. So that is mainly due to the fact that we were reinvesting in higher interest rates, of course, and we had a huge bond market rally over the last July, August, and September as the Fed cut interest rates by 50 basis points in September. So they followed that up with another 25 basis points earlier this month. So interest rates are heading lower, which means that when interest rates are going lower, prices on bonds are going higher, and hence our unrealized gain portion of the portfolio has improved tremendously. We were carrying a very large unrealized loss while the Fed was raising short-term interest rates so aggressively over the past several years. And in the general fund at the end of this period, we actually crossed into unrealized gain territory. Just to give you a little bit of heads up on what's coming, the months of October and so far in November have not been as positive. The bond market has reacted to slightly higher inflation and employment data. So we have retraced the bond market. US Treasury yields had dropped over 100 basis points in that quarter ended September 30th. And in October and so far in November, we've retraced about 70% of that. So we've had a considerable move in the reverse direction, but we anticipate that the Fed will continue on their monetary policy easing path. The December meeting is really up for grabs, 50-50, whether they'll cut interest rates another 25 basis points. We're keeping our portfolio durations as close to benchmarks as cash flows allow. It's just a little bit harder to get durations out longer when rates are falling, because we have to wait for maturities and we use those maturities to lengthen portfolio durations. So that's basically where we're at. So if there are any questions.
Thank you, Vicki, for that presentation. Are there any questions from board members?
Governor, I'm not sure I have a question. I appreciate the report, very, very complete, in my view. But I just commenting on such an unusual time in New Mexico's history to have this much cash invested and to have the resources of the state treasurer's office to invest it, and obviously doing very well. A lot of this is also reflected in the fact that we had this huge consent agenda with all these capital projects coming forward. It's unique for those of us who've been around for decades watching state government. So thanks for what you do. That's all.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Any additional information?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Vicki, thank you. We'll go on to presentations. We'll begin with item number 31, Housing New Mexico. Lizzie, thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Lieutenant Governor and members of the committee. Great to be with you today. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present to you this morning. With me today, I have Arundhati Bose. She is our Chief Finance Officer, and then also Alex Lundy, who's our Finance Manager. Arundhati will be presenting to you here in a little bit after I cover some items. I do want to let you know, and Ashley mentioned it a little earlier, is that we recently rebranded to Housing New Mexico from MFA. We feel it better describes what we do as an organization. So we may get tied up every now and then. We still struggle as we've been housing or MFA 49 years, so we still say MFA from time to time. So Housing New Mexico is a state's housing agency. We were created in 1975, so we're approaching our 50th anniversary here next year. In the time we've been in existence, we've assisted over 500,000 families in the last 49 years. Approximately 70,000 families have become first-time home buyers or owners of a home. Annually, we assist about 20,000 families across the state. Just this last year, which we closed out in September, we assisted over 25,000 families in all 33 counties with about 2,300 families becoming first-time home buyers. We'll say that sometimes we struggle to reach all of the counties out there, and we hadn't had a service provided in Harding County throughout most of the year, but in September we did, we weatherized a house over there, so we can probably say we've assisted all 33 counties. We administer over 40 different programs that cover the full spectrum of affordable housing, from homelessness to home ownership. In addition to the tax exempt bonds that we receive funding from this board, we also receive funding from HUD, from DOE, some state treasury authorities that we have, some funding from the state, which includes the severance tax bonds that you oversee for us, and also some monies from utility companies, in addition to programs that we fund with our own private funds or MFA, Housing New Mexico funds. We provide the services with the assistance of over, and we're very proud to have a network of over 350 partners across the state that deliver the services at the local level. The private activity bond cap that this board allocates is a foundation for both our single family and our multifamily programs, and represents the majority of the funding that we receive. Revenue generated from these activities allows us to invest into our Housing Opportunity Fund. We've invested over $250 million into that makes some programs available. Some of the most notable ones are our down payment assistance program, and also our partners program, where we partner with Habitats for Humanity across the state to give them some liquidity. We have a strong history of utilizing and managing this valuable resources that you provide to us, and Arundhati will give you a little bit more details. But we use a combination of financial mechanisms to efficiently leverage the private activity bond cap that you entrust us with. On the multifamily side, we leverage that with low-income housing tax credits and also some gap funding. On the single family side, in the bonds, we do replacement refunding that I'm sure Member Cassidy is very familiar with. In addition to, also this year, we started using some blending our tax exempt with some taxable bonds as well to stretch that bond cap. We have a very strong oversight of the organization, which includes 3 elected officials, which is the Lieutenant Governor, the State Treasurer, and the Attorney General, and then 4 other members that the Governor also appoints. We have an oversight committee that this year had 19 members on it. We just had our last meeting last week. We also are heavily audited. We have over 12 audits on an annual basis that are conducted. And we're proud to say that we have 3 decades of unmodified audits. Switching gears a little bit, and I know it was covered at a high level, is the New Mexico Housing Trust funds that we receive. In the last 16 months, we've received $122 million for the Housing Trust Fund. That includes the recurring funds of $37 million and $34 million, and then a $50 million allocation that was made in January of this year. $84 million of that $122 million just became available 4 months ago in July. Consistent with what the director reported a little bit earlier, we've procured $103 million of that, which is 83%. We've awarded $88 million of that, which is 73%. And we've expended $25 million, which is 21% of the funds that have been made available to us in the last 16 months. With $84 million of that being in the last 4 months. The leverage ratio that the fund requires is 3-to-1, and we're currently sitting at a 17-to-1 leverage ratio. We've assisted approximately 4,800 families with that. On the multifamily side, we currently have 51 different developments across the state in one phase of construction or another. That represents 4,800 units. That's across 20 municipalities and 15 counties. With that, I'll turn it over to Arundhati to go a little more detail into the question.
Thank you, Izzy.
Honorable members of the board and Mr. Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Today I want to present to you three requests for the private activity bond volume cap on behalf of Housing New Mexico. To begin with, we are requesting both a direct allocation for 2025 and any unrelated carry forwards that you have from 2024. This critical resource, if allocated to Housing New Mexico, will help in providing affordable housing for New Mexicans. For the first of this request, Housing New Mexico respectfully requests 40% of, or approximately 156 million of the new private activity bond volume cap to fund the high demand for our first-time homebuyer program. We have been on a loan production schedule where between 21 and 24, as of 9/30/24, it has varied between 384 million to 518 million. And 2024 is on track to set a new record for us for single family production, in spite of rising housing prices, market volatility, as well as the Fed strategy with the interest rate. Housing New Mexico's lower interest rate makes it possible through the issuance of the tax-exempt bonds and helps to use this critical resource, helping turning New Mexicans into homeowners. We should mention that Housing New Mexico can make available the below market interest rates for the single family products, particularly in the current environment. It becomes very important for people to get access to that lower rate. We also have a down payment and closing cost assistance that increases the attractiveness of the programs and fosters and increases homeownership among the low and moderate New Mexicans. We want to give a statistics to you that home ownership rate in New Mexico actually stands at 69.1%, which is higher than the national average of 65.6%. Housing New Mexico has a history of optimally utilizing all the direct allocations as well as the carry forwards. Just to be specific, the direct allocation usage between 2020 and 2023 has varied between 75 million to 151.3 million. Although Housing New Mexico demonstrates a continuous need for the private activity volume cap, we also try and optimize and stretch this scarce resource as far as possible. Just as our CEO had mentioned, we do use the advantage of replacement refunding, and we have been doing this to cover at least 10 to 15% for every bond issue. Along with that, from first time in 2024, we have blended in taxable deals, therefore making it about 20 to 30% of our bond issues. And as our bond issues has been the highest in this year for about 520, with the direct allocation and carry forwards, this has given us a significant bump. But because we have blended in the taxables at a lower percentage, the weighted average interest rate on the mortgages have been still below market. So we feel that this is a win-win situation for us. Without going into specific details and numbers, I would also like to highlight the economic impact that loans generate. It generates a multiplier effect on the New Mexico economy, creating construction activity, governmental revenues in form of taxes, job creation, and of course, the quality of life. Housing New Mexico has provided a few graphs in the request letter that we've submitted, just to give you some visual depiction and to thank you for your continued support. In addition to requesting the single family private activity bond volume cap, we are also requesting about 200 million for cap to be used for multifamily projects statewide. Right now, we have a pipeline which shows about 190 million. And Housing New Mexico leverages its role as the issuer to finance these feasible projects by layering in tax credits, HUD Section 8 rental subsidies, and USDA rental assistance. There is a continuous need for multifamily housing, a stubborn deficit in the housing stock, affordable housing scarcity contributes to a lot of shortage. It is estimated that New Mexico has a shortage of about 41,000 affordable and available rental units. And your availability of these private activity bond volume cap will help us to reach that objective to some extent. Every dollar of volume cap also creates leveraging effects through tax credits, as well as other benefits that I talked about. So $1 of private activity volume cap generates about $1.84 when leveraged. I would like to reiterate that not only does Housing New Mexico adhere to its mission and vision to assist the New Mexicans with the lower interest rate home loans, which arises out of tight management and optimal utilization of the volume cap. But we have also managed our finances very prudently, and we have used any net effect that we have to be invested in programs like rehab DPA through our opportunity funds. With that, I stand for any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Thank you for the information. Any additional information need to be presented?
Mr. Lieutenant Governor, I'd just like to say by allocating a private activity bond cap, I request that you're helping create the foundation for that is key to having strong families and communities across the state. So at this point, we're prepared to take any questions you may have.
Well, thank you, Uzi. Any questions from board members? Member Gonzalo.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Housing New Mexico. I have two questions. The first is curious about what relationship, if any, you have with organizations like HomeWise, which has a very similar mission as you all do, understandably not for profit. But I'm somewhat familiar with them being on the board of Ancorum, and we are a funder to them. So I'm just wondering about the synergies.
Mr. Chairman and Member Trevisani, we work closely with with HomeWise, with Mike Lofton and his staff there. We provide funding to them, and they actually are one of the lenders that provides these mortgages across the state, and we funded them to do some single family development. So we work close with them.
Okay, great. That was my supposition. And one more question, if I may. Just looking at Exhibit 2 on page 9, which is your loans purchased by county. I'm curious if it's really sort of population based, or is it case by case income need? It seems population related, but I'm unfamiliar with a lot of the statistics on the various counties. So just wondering.
Mr. Chairman and Member Trevisani, what page was that? I'm sorry, which graphic are you looking at?
It's page 9, Exhibit 2. It's just the
Okay, yeah.
number of loans purchased and the percent of loans purchased by county. So 39% for Bernalillo, Santa Fe, looked small to me, but I'm realizing now that Sandoval, Doña Ana County, these are fairly large areas. So just looking at the percent of loans purchased and wondering if that is really directly related to population, because I'm sure there's needs across every single county in this state.
Mr. Chairman and Member Trevisani, you are correct. It does generally track the population across the state. There are 3 counties on there that you can see where we did not provide loans, and those are the very not densely populated counties. That would be Harding, Hidalgo, and Union County. So we'll work to try to make a loan there in this next year, but it generally does track. That's correct, and Mora. How could I forget Mora? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Trevisani. Any further questions?
Governor, thank you. First of all, 41,000 housing units need statewide, and what about 30,000 in the Albuquerque area? What's it gonna take to break through and get that done? I know a lot of resources have been allocated to housing, and this administration has tried to even allocate more resources right to housing. Are we making a dent? How do you feel about that? By the way, the presentation is fabulous. A lot of great information in here. I'll have a couple follow-ups as well.
Mr. Chairman and Member Cassidy, thank you for the question. That there is a great need out there. And I think the additional funding that has been provided has helped us make a bigger dent. As we get more money that becomes available to us, we get more development and more interest in folks coming in from out of state, as an example, with the 4% tax credits in the multifamily bond cap that we get. So I see as how do we make a bigger dent? I think it's just additional resources. And as they become available, we'll get more and more interest in more development in the state. I'll tell you that prior to this last year, we had not had bond cap constraints where we had sufficient cap, not only for the single family programs that we have, but also for the multifamily. This year, we came one transaction away from not having sufficient bond cap for the multifamily. And we see that in this coming year getting even tighter and potentially having to go to a competitive basis to issue the bond cap on the multifamily. And I think the more funding that we get, to help us leverage that and put less strain on the bond cap that's required, it'll allow us to do more, but, definitely more money is needed for that. And I think as we get more money, the capacity will increase to do more.
Can I follow up, Kevin? The units that you're building, multifamily, not single family, but they're usually all just dedicated, all the units dedicated to low and moderate income, right? At various levels. Are there any market rates, apartments being done in combination with low and moderate? Are you seeing that move? Again, trying to, think about the attainable housing units that we need in addition to low and moderate income housing units. Is there a trend that?
Mr. Chairman and Member Cassidy, I'm going to ask Christie to help me here a little bit. We do have from time to time on our tax credit program where we have mixed units where there's some affordable and then some market rate. Although I don't recall seeing a whole lot of market rate in the applications that we received recently, Christie. I'm not sure if that's correct. Do we get any market rate or mixed unit developments in the last few years?
We have one that I can just think of off the top of my head in Artesia, which is 198 units, and 191 units are tax credit qualified units. And 7 of those units are going to be market units. So it is a mix, but I'm not seeing a lot of the mix now because what creates these tax credits for the 4% bond deals is the cost, we call it eligible basis, the basis that the cost for construction creates the number of tax credits that are received by the developer and their equity partner. So it really adds a lot of equity into the projects so they can have those lower levels of the tax credit set asides. So I am seeing them at 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%. So there is a variety of different set asides that are coming in for these tax credits today.
Thank you. No follow-ups on that, but if I could, another one with regard to the single family program. I noticed you had a bond offering in the market this week.
Mhm.
What will the lending rates be to first-time home buyers as a result of that?
We did have a pricing for a bond issue yesterday, and the interest rates associated for the government rate is 5.85, and the conventional is 6.125. And that bond issue was a $70 million bond issue, all tax exempt. The reason we did all tax exempt and didn't put in taxables in this issue was because of the volatility in the market following the elections, and every day it's a different story. And we also strategically went to the market on Monday because there were a bunch of other HFAs coming to market later part of the week. So we wanted to capture that, it's a supply demand mechanism. So that was the rates.
And I think if I could, Governor, what is the conventional rate now by comparison to the 5.85 and 6.8?
Mr. Chairman and Member Cassidy, right now we are approximately 100 basis points or 1% under the market. Our current rate right now is 5.75, and market rate as of yesterday was 6.75. We're not generally that far under market. We're generally average maybe 50 basis points. But over the last month, actually, we've been close to about 1% under the market, which has been a tremendous savings for those families that are able to take advantage of our program.
Thank you, Governor. Appreciate the responses.
Thank you, Member Cassidy. Any further questions or comments? Izzy, thank you for the information that was presented. I see and I get updates from Martina, who sits on the board for me at times, that she really shows the approach that's taking place. I spoke recently to the Association of Realtors, and we had a discussion, talked about inventory. I shared many of the strategic plan that the board has worked on from Housing New Mexico, and I think that it was well received. One of the areas that was a real, I guess that I wanted to ask you as far as some of the discussions, even though when we talk about lending and we talk about the opportunities to provide people for housing, what is the discussion that's taking place with the construction industry? When we look and see building new houses, we have to have the infrastructure. From what I gather is a real challenge across the state, especially in our rural communities. Are there any discussions that Housing New Mexico is having with the construction industry portion of it?
Mr. Chairman and Lieutenant Governor, We have started having discussions with, not necessarily with Construction Industries Division, but definitely with Home Builders Association and developers out there. You know, one of the positive things from last year's legislation is that the governor signed off, the legislature passed and the governor signed off on some infrastructure funding that went to the Opportunity Enterprise Fund targeted for infrastructure for housing. And I know that they received some applications and may be looking at making an award here this month under some of that. But there are some challenges, obviously, with getting the infrastructure in place to build more. And there's also the entitlement process and the amount of time that it takes for planning and zoning and permitting and inspections that you know, creates a little bit of a bottleneck. And I know that there's a lot of concern and some interest in maybe streamlining some of those. Some of the funds that we receive, we're incentivizing or providing points to local governments that have a streamlined process for that. So we're hopeful that that'll help, and I hope that addresses your question. But we'll definitely reach out to CID some more, maybe talk to the folks there and see how we can maybe put our heads together and see if there's a way to maybe streamline or expedite those processes.
Yeah, thank you for that. And not necessarily CID, just in general, is you're talking with the Home Builders Association, others, contractors, that their discussion and recognizing that we have to increase some of the inventory. We recognize that without the water lines, without the systems in place underneath that people don't see, we can't build, we can't have more opportunity and accessibility for housing. So I'm glad you're having some of those discussions and would like to, I guess, in our board meetings, just to get some updates later on how that could take place there. A lot of emphasis, I believe, is it a $500 million request that's coming to the legislature this coming year again? Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
So hopefully the legislature, and I know that they're invested in wanting to assist this. We want stable funds so we can have stable healthcare, so we can have stable education system. We can hopefully reduce the crime rates. I think all this ties in together. So wonderful work that you guys do. Thank you, Izzy.
Thank you.
Just one question, Governor, if I might. It's kind of off the topic a little bit. You made a presentation to Belen the other day. I'm just wondering, was there any follow-up from Belen to you all?
Lieutenant Governor and Member Sanchez, not directly from Belen, although yesterday I did talk to Mr. Ralph Mims from Rio Communities, and they have some development going on there. So he's going to be giving us a call here in the very near future so we can talk and see if they can access our programs, but nothing specifically from the presentation about 6 months or so ago to that.
Governor, I believe it's a retirement project up in the Rio community, similar to Jubilee down in Los Lunas. That's what I understand. But again, Belen has not gotten back with you or spoken with you about any of the issues that you brought before them.
Governor and Member Sanchez, that is correct.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Izzy, and Senator Sanchez. I did also meet with the group, and I agree that they are putting together some information. I think there's some things that could be done to help move it along. And if we're talking about the same location where the original hospital is going to be built, I believe that that's the same project that we were discussing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Izzy, thank you. Thank you for joining us. We'll go on to lobbying programs. It's going to be item number 32 on our agenda. And Ashley, I believe that you'll be guiding us through that. Luis, you're going to join us? Good to see you, Luis.
Lieutenant Governor and members of the board, I'll kick it off, but hand it over to Luis pretty quickly. I know he's got some information to share, but item number 32 is the authorizing resolution for the state of New Mexico severance tax note series 2024 S-C. This is a senior severance tax note with a maximum principal amount of $350 million. That amount was established through appropriations made in the 2024 legislative session for a handful of DOT projects, as well as about 30 million for tribal projects. Staff are currently reviewing the projects from both the tribal communities and the Department of Transportation for readiness. And so we will have a final project list next month. But with that, Mr. I'll hand it over to Luis to walk through the resolution.
Good morning, Lieutenant Governor, members of the board. I'm Luis Carrasco with the Rody Law Firm, the board's bond counsel, as you know. And I wanted to introduce, I don't think all of you had the opportunity to meet a new lawyer at our firm who is working on State Board of Finance matters, Martha Carpenter. Some of you have met her, but not all of you. And she did actually prepare the initial drafts of the resolutions that are before you there. So she's integrating into the bond team very nicely, and just wanted to bring that to your attention. As Ashley said, item number 32 is the authorizing resolution for the state of New Mexico severance tax note series 2024 SC in the maximum principal amount of $350 million. As we've seen with prior senior notes, this is one of a series of short-term bonds customarily issued by the Board of Finance to fund legislatively appropriated projects and the statutory set-asides for water, tribal infrastructure, and colonial infrastructure projects, and funding of the New Mexico Housing Trust Fund, which is one of the programs that was being discussed in the prior presentation. And that's been occurring since 2023, specifically with regard to the Housing Trust Fund. In the 2024 legislative session, the legislature passed and the governor signed into law Senate Bill 275, which authorized the issuance of up to $320 million in severance tax bonds to fund certain transportation projects of the Department of Transportation, up to $30 million of tribal community projects certified by the Indian Affairs Department, and up to $3,390,393 to fund projects authorized by Chapter 53 of New Mexico laws of 2022, for which severance tax bonds have not yet been issued. Interest on this note is not excludable from income for federal tax purposes, and therefore projects which may not be suitable for tax exempt funding can be funded through this vehicle, but also projects that are also suitable for tax exempt funding could be funded with this mechanism as well. So it's a very flexible instrument, and that's worked to the state's advantage, in my opinion, over the last several decades that we've been doing this program. Except as described previously, the authorizing resolution for this note is similar to the ones that you've seen before for severance tax notes, in that it authorizes its issuance and sale to the state treasurer. It provides for a maximum par amount of the note, as we've said, of $350 million, and a maturity date on the date after their issuance. So we anticipate issuing on December 30th. They'll be paid off overnight on December 31st, as has been the tradition with these notes. The resolution also authorizes and describes the method and sale of the note by way of private sale to the state treasurer, approves the form of the bond purchase agreement to be used in connection with that sale. It provides the form, terms, and details of the note. It addresses the various projects to be financed with the proceeds from the note, which, as Ashley mentioned, we'll be back to you next month with a specific project list that will receive proceeds from the note as we complete the due diligence readiness review that Ashley mentioned. The resolution also and that will be at the December 17th board meeting, your next regular meeting. The resolution also pledges amounts in the severance tax bonding fund for the repayment of the note. It incorporates provisions relating to the execution, delivery, transfer, and exchange of the series of the note, and it creates the various funds and accounts necessary for the proper administration of the note, and incorporates provisions relating to the administration of those funds. It makes certain covenants, including covenants relating to the collection of severance taxes and non-extension of time for payment of the interest on the notes. And importantly, it delegates to the executive officer of the board the authority to determine on or before December 27th the actual amount of the note, such amount not to exceed that maximum $350 million. Additionally, and consistently with recent note issues, this note will accrue interest at the rate of the secured overnight financing rate plus 15 basis points as determined by the state treasurer on December 16th, 2024. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the Lieutenant Governor or many members of the board may have.
Thank you, Luis, and great job on the presentation, putting that together for us. Would you like to share anything else?
I don't think so. I think this is a really pretty straightforward, almost as cookie cutter as you can get. So, and nothing you've not seen before.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from board members?
Just one, if I could, Governor. First of all, I find it very attractive that we can sell this much debt and pay them off, you know, the day after they're issued. And I know our staff had a lot to do with the structure of that, avoiding the issuance of long-term debt, which I commend staff for, during the legislative process. I'm just curious, what potential transportation projects are on this or mentioned in the legislation?
Lieutenant Governor, Member Cassidy, there's a list of about 17 or 18 transportation projects that the legislature specified. I think, and Ashley can correct me if I'm wrong about this, I think they were projects that initially had been anticipated to be funded from the traditional transportation project that's run out of the Finance Authority. But recognizing the capacity and the positive financial position that the state was in, saw an opportunity to use a different funding source, and there being capacity and the ability to pay it off overnight. So they sort of did a bit of a swap there. Ashley, did you have anything to add on that?
Mr. Chair, Member Cassidy, not really. These projects were identified by the Department of Transportation as being projects that were priorities in the sense that they could be started sooner. So projects that were further along in the process with the intent, I believe, of the legislation to be funding them as quickly as possible. And I would note that the authorization is only for one fiscal year. So this is one of two note sales in which those transportation projects can be considered before that authorization expires. But again, the project list was specifically developed by the Department of Transportation. I can pull up the bill. I don't have the list exactly in front of me, but
Maybe just a follow-up, are the projects on the STIP?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you, that's all I need.
Thank you, and I believe, Luis and Ashley, I believe that was from the last legislative session, that there was some projects that were originally included and were taken off and then were added, so I believe that was part of it there. I was concerned because I wasn't sure that we had the capacity to meet all those obligations, but Luis, what you're presenting is that we will have the capacity to be review that, which is good, because you were gonna have some unhappy legislators
Our
to the session.
Our measures indicate that there shouldn't be no issue making that debt service, and we'll also be able to make the statutorily required transfers to the permanent fund on top of that, so anticipate no issues.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further comments from staff?
Mr. Chair, no, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Luis. I believe that you're doing the next presentation.
Yes.
And Mr. Chair, if I, just to interrupt, apologies, these both are action items, so we will need to seek an
I
approval.
apologize. So we'll go ahead and take a motion on item number 32, authorizing a resolution for State of New Mexico severance tax note. We have a motion.
That's all.
We have a motion from Senator Simmons. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 32 has been approved, and we'll go on to item number 33.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, members. Agenda item 33 is the authorizing resolution for the state of New Mexico supplemental severance tax note series 2024 SD in the maximum principal amount of $800 million. This note is also one of a series of short-term bonds customarily issued by the Board of Finance. But rather than funding legislatively appropriated projects and set-asides, supplemental notes such as this fund only public school capital outlay projects and public school capital improvement projects as directed by the state Severance Tax Bonding Act, the Public School Capital Outlay Act, and the Public Schools Capital Improvement Act, and as certified by the Public School Capital Outlay Council. The issuance of this note is contingent upon the PSCOC certification of need for the bond proceeds. And if such certification is not issued by the PSCOC by December 27th, 2024, the note will not issue. I spoke with Ashley earlier this morning. We're still waiting for further direction from the PSCOC as to whether they will make the certification or not. But just wanted to call that contingency out to you that we may end up ultimately not issuing this bond. It'll all depend on whether the PSCOC gives us that direction. The resolution is otherwise substantially similar to the resolution for the SC note that you just approved. And in its structuring and of the issuance of the sale and the note, its tax status and its terms. However, the pledge on the amounts in the Severance Tax Bonding Act for repayment of the note are subordinate to the pledge of such funds for senior severance tax notes such as the SC that you just approved. And we do not anticipate the need for an amending resolution on this note next month. The interest rate on this note will also be SOFR plus 15 basis points to be determined by the state treasurer on December 16th, and issuance if it occurs on December 30th with repayment the following day on December 31st. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Member Cassidy?
Yes, thank you. How'd you know?
You served on a lot of boards together.
Yes. The question is, why wouldn't they certify the need for it? Is there too much cash sitting at PSCOC and we can't get the money spent, or what's the challenge here?
Mr. Chair, if I may, Member Cassidy, so yes, there is a lot of work being done at PSFA to evaluate what they what PSCOC calls a uncommitted balance. And so awards have really increased at the PSCOC for systems and standard-based projects for public schools. So that could be rehabilitation, it could be complete replacement. We see a lot of rural districts consolidating their K through 12 schools into one building. So there's been a lot of awards, but there has been a lot of money as well. And so we do have a large amount of unexpended funds, about $1.5 billion that is unexpended, and a smaller portion of that is the uncommitted. And so before, the council is really having to weigh whether or not, before we can make sure that we're expending those funds and getting that uncommitted balance down, which is available for new awards, we're looking at that to determine whether we should be certifying, the PSCOC should be certifying for new money, given that they may have a cash balance that's fairly large.
And follow up, if we don't issue the bonds, the money reverts to the permanent fund.
So, Mr. Chair, Member Cassidy, yet somewhat. So we do have a transfer to the permanent fund on December 31st of any monies remaining in the fund. That said, in June, we still will have an opportunity to fund up to the capacity, should the cash allow for it, of this fiscal year's capacity for PSCOC. So it's not that they lose this money entirely. If the cash comes in strong in the second half of the fiscal year, they'll be able to certify for a larger amount up to that, the capacity, which right now is estimated at about 808 million. That may be adjusted as we finalize the fiscal year capacity in January for the legislative session.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you for the responses.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
I have Travis Sunny, 1 second, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 33 has been approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both for joining us. We're going on to item number 34, that's gonna be rural property dispositions, and I believe that we have representatives with us today.
Morning, Governor.
Good morning.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for having us this morning. My name is Barrett Roberts. I represent Appleby Public Schools for Module Spurling Law Firm. I just prepare a few remarks to kind of give you a background on our application, kind of how we got here, why I'm sitting here today, and then stand for any questions you guys might have. APS purchased about 220 acres of vacant lands on the west side of Albuquerque about 2011 or so. Since then, we've significantly developed that property. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar, but the Nucinda Stadium sits there, a large sports complex. There's the Tresca Pocahontas Community School, and we have some future plans for 50 acres for a residential childhood development center. 60 acres we're trying to sell today is deemed surplus by the Albuquerque Public School Board of Education. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First off, the APS leadership hasn't there's no anticipated future need for any educational facilities, complexes, anything like that in the area. Additionally, this kind of abuts the petroglyphs. So the topography, the volcanic rock in the area makes it very difficult for APS to build. So as you know, a collection of those reasons, the APF board declared surplus, and that's why we're trying to dispose of it. And I am remiss, I forgot to introduce my colleagues here. This is Serena Gallegos, Margaret Callahan of APS Real Estate. And we also have the Executive Director of Capital Construction, Karen Allred, and Executive Director of Capital Master Planning, Kizitso Bizonzi. I apologize, probably butchered that, but forgive me for not introducing those folks earlier. As planned to dispose of this property, APS put out a request for a proposal in August 2023 for brokerage services. We received 6 letters of interest, I guess, or 6 bids. The most competitive of which was Colliers. They could provide us the lowest commission rate as well as the fastest time to market. And they also had a wealth of experience in marketing this type of property. So a number of reasons, the APS leadership, as well as some folks from UNM, decided to select Colliers. Thereafter, Colliers publicly advertised sale of this property on a number of commercial real estate websites and forums. And we received a number of bids ranging from $4.2 million to $6.6 million. After assessing those bids, the APS leadership team picked Pulte to develop it. And their plan is to develop a number of residential homes in that area. The reason we selected Pulte was the highest pricing. It was the most competitive pricing. Their closing timeline was the quickest. And also Pulte has developed, and probably as a reason for their interest in this, had developed areas in the neighborhood. And from our understanding, had a good relationship with the neighbors. So they've been good neighbors to the APS and also the folks in the area. With that, we entered a letter of intent in May and executed a purchase agreement in July of 2024. We have a hard closing deadline pending State Board of Finance approval, as well as some other approvals of June 2025. But if either we don't obtain approval from State Board of Finance or the subdivision process that Pulte is pursuing doesn't go through, the deal will terminate and the property revert to APS, the earnest money back to Pulte. I mentioned the subdivision process. Pulte plans to subdivide the land, the 60 plus acres, into 220 lots or so, with an average pricing of a lot about $30,000 per lot. That equates to about $6.6 million for the total purchase price. If for whatever reason Pulte can't do that because of APS, or sorry, the city of Albuquerque approvals, building restrictions, what have you, then the price will decrease by $30,000 per lot and not be able to develop until you get to $6.25 million, and that's the hard floor. In no event will the property sell for less than $6.25 million. APS is very excited to be here. I think this is the first time in a very long time APS has been in front of the State Board of Finance. We have a number of projects we'd like to bring, once we get the hang of this. This is my first time in front of the State Board of Finance. So, but I say that because the $6.6 million, if this is successful, will go to the APS Land Enterprise Fund, which is a separate fund from its operational capital budget, which allows for the development of educational facilities throughout the city without tapping into those funds. So those, the salaries, the programs, those other things are separate and distinct. And this allows for a real opportunity, not just the west side, but for APS to develop additional properties throughout the city. APS is, like I said, very excited about this project. We have future projects that we'd like to bring in front of the board. But pending that, I stand for any questions you have. And then again, thank you for your time.
Thank you for joining us. Any additional information that wanted to be presented?
No, I think they did a good job covering.
Yeah, thank you. Well, welcome to the State Board of Finance. We're the nice committee, so that.
Not the Thunderdome.
Do you have any questions or comments from board members?
Governor, I do have a comment. I'm sorry to maybe take time here. I'm really tickled that you brought the project forward in its current format, which is, relieving yourselves of excess real estate assets. You have lots of real estate assets, but also making it available for housing. So this will be single family housing, which is just a huge need. So thank you for that. But I thank EPS in general. I know Karen and Kazito are here, and you as a team have done a fabulous job rebuilding Albuquerque Public Schools over the last 30 years. They're just marvelous facilities. So congrats. Thanks for being here. Thanks for continuing to work at it.
Do you have any further questions or comments? Seeing none, okay, I'll go ahead. Ashley, do we have any further information to present?
Mr. Chair and members, we do have a contingency on the approval. And so if approved, approval would be contingent upon staff's receipt of a fully executed quitclaim deed. But we've received the signed purchase agreement and amendment, so that's all received, just a signed quitclaim deed once the property closes.
All right, I'll entertain a motion. I move approval. One motion for approval. Do we have a second? And a second from Senator Sanchez. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you. Congratulations. I look forward to the I believe we're at the higher education portion of the meeting, is there? Hey, you're I'm sorry. Yeah, we'll see you there.
Good morning, Governor. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to present this morning. We do have a couple of projects on the agenda for discussion today. First of all, Governor, if I may, I'd like to just extend my gratitude and thanks to Director Leach and her team for all of the work that they've done in assisting with all of our project submissions, and then also working closely with our higher ed institutions as well in order to prepare for this hearing. So just my thanks. I also want to thank the board for the approval of all the items on the consent agenda this morning. There is a lot of work that is happening in higher ed. And although I don't like to bring up the results of the elections at times, I do want to say that I am very excited about the passage of the Higher Education General Obligation Bond, which will actually provide $230.3 million of higher education general obligation bonds to higher education institutions for capital improvements. So that did pass now in November. And so I know that there'll be a lot of work coming forward soon in order to provide that funding to higher ed. So we will have a lot of projects coming before this board in the coming year as well. So for agenda item number 35, New Mexico State University requests approval of capital expenditures for the construction of the New Mexico Department of Ag Administration building in Las Cruces. I wanted to provide a little bit of context on this particular project, as other phases of this project have already been heard by this board. The NMDA facility is located on the NMSU campus, and the facilities are owned by NMSU. This facility housed the essential functions of the NMDA, including laboratories for petroleum standards testing and metrology. These were all housed within the administration building before, along with all the administrative functions. It's also important to note that that particular facility, having toured it a couple of times, actually had settling in that facility as well, which meant that there was a sunken den without there really needing to be a sunken den in that facility. And so phase 1 and phase 2 of this particular project actually did include the renovation of the existing chemistry lab and added a new lab building to house the lab related functions of NMDA. This request that you're seeing in front of you here is actually going to complete all of the work for NMDA, which allows the construction of a new 27,489 gross square foot administration building, which will provide conference room space, large kitchen and test kitchens for product demonstration, administrative offices, as well as other support spaces necessary for the mission of the New Mexico Department of Ag. This facility sits within the NMSU Ag District and provides a direct connection to ag education and commerce in New Mexico. This project is being funded by 10.5 million in higher education general obligation bonds, 17.9 million in state general fund appropriations, and $20,000 in institutional funding for a total cost of $28,420,000. Governor, if I may, I'll now turn it over to representatives from NMSU to go into a deeper dive on the specific project. Thank you.
Good to see you. Yeah, thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you, Chief of Staff Moni, Honorable Committee, Lieutenant Governor. Thank you for the opportunity to present these two projects. Out of an abundance of caution, I have invited half of Las Cruces here, a lot of subject matter experts. So, but I'm Raghu Raghavan, Associate Vice President of Facilities and Services at New Mexico State University. To my right, our Provost Lakshmi Reddy, and Interim Assistant or Interim VP of Finance and Administration, Chris Kinsley. Jose Loera, Executive Director of Projects Division, and Tim Darden from NMDA. Online, we have Interim Dean of Engineering, David Haragi. We also have our consultants online, our design consultants online, Scott Leonard from Decker Paris Sabatini, who's worked on the NMDA building, Matt McKim, who's also worked on the NMDA building, Jason Clark and Abel Natividad from Studio D, and they work on the Thomas and Brown building. I forgot to mention Robert Estrada over here, who is our Assistant Director within the PD&E division. I hope I didn't miss out on anybody. Did I do okay? All right. So first slide, please. So this is our, I think I'll look this way. Our NMDA project. This is the phase 3 of the project and will house administrative offices, the teaching lab, test kitchen, and recording studio. We expect this to be completed in 2027. And as Chief of Staff only mentioned, it's 27,358 square feet. Next slide, please. So the rationale for this project is to visibly distinguish NMDA, provide a safe and efficient work environment, consolidate staff into departments for optimal space utilization, create spaces and systems that minimize the needs for O&M, and create inviting spaces that make the work of NMDA transparent and on display for the public. Next slide, please. The project budget is $28,420,000. This includes design and construction of the new administration offices, the test kitchen, recording studio, control room, and conference rooms, IT build room, file storage room, and exterior courtyard expansion. Next slide, please. So we expect the project, the start of design has begun. So November 2023, the start of construction, that's a mistake over there. That's going to be in January of 2025. And we expect construction to be completed in August of 2027. Next slide, please. The project funding broken down over here, FY23 GOBs, FY24 general fund, and FY24 BRR funds also. This is our sequence of approvals. And we hope to get approval from State Board of Finance today. This is our budget breakdown. We're happy to get granular with this if needed. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And this is our supplemental information. So the building prior to demolition, the site after demolition. And we stand by for questions on this project.
Thank you. Is there any additional information that any of your guests would like to give?
I will pass that on to Tim Darling from the MBA. Is there any addition?
I don't think so. I think.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll go to members of the board. Any questions or comments? And thank you for the presentation. I believe it's on our, do we have a presentation? That was,
Mr. Chair, no, that was provided this morning, so
yeah,
it's not in.
we can get that sent to the board members. There was a lot of the graphs there and it was hard to catch up some of the numbers as well.
We
but
can
We can get that, that'd be helpful, but yes.
You mentioned some severe settling. Is that due to soil issues in the area or what was the settling issues?
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Member Dewan. I will defer to NMSU to talk more to the specifics.
Lieutenant Governor, Member Lujan, the prior settlement of the building that was demoed, it was for soil conditions. When we did do some excavation in there a few years back, we discovered also some piping, underground piping had decayed, causing the settlement issues.
It's not the dirt itself, it's more of a leak that was prior or something like that.
It was a leak in some of the soil conditions there are also. That used to be the university having a royal that ran right through where that building was built. At one point.
And that's been figured out since.
Yes,
That's fine.
yes, it has.
Okay. Any further questions?
If I could, since you have your full team here, and thank you for the presentation. Can you just discuss the bidding climate? And then when this project goes out to bid, it has to be correct. Just if we would, I know Decker Parrish is on the line. Decker 17 now.
So Lieutenant Governor, Member Cassidy, the project is currently out to bid. We've done a lot of outreach to the larger contractors. We've been in a kind of secluded area of New Mexico where those larger contractors were not available. So we have done a lot of outreach through our procurement office to larger contractors, and we've been very successful. We've had a couple larger contractors open offices at Las Cruces, not just benefited New Mexico State, but other local entities also.
Or you could follow up. I had noticed it's about $904 a square foot budget for presentation approval purposes. Do you expect it to go as high as that number?
Number maybe will take down much really more.
Yeah, so, Lieutenant Governor, Member Cassidy, so, it is possible, we've done our, due diligence in reviewing the opinions of costs from, the design team and the, third-party estimators. With the scope of work, included in this project, we feel confident that, we'll be within that $900 a square foot. It's, mostly office space with the exception of the kitchen. So, considering the type of space that's being constructed, yes, we do expect it to be within that.
Gonna use the full budget, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you. I guess there's nothing we can do about that.
Any further questions? I just wanted to see, so this was presented at the 2021 summer hearings? Is that accurate, or was that just a type of?
Governor, that's correct.
Okay, and that was on the first phases on that?
This actually, so the New Mexico Department of Ag, is actually, the facilities are owned by NMSU. However, the funding for the Department of Ag actually comes through the statewide capital outlay.
Yeah.
And so, so in 2021, the initial phases of this project came forward for funding. And it's when the department actually, got involved with Secretary Whitty, in really assessing the space.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just curious, at that time, we maybe didn't have a number of projections, but what those projections might have been in 2021 as compared to now, and that they were significantly different.
Governor, you're absolutely right. There has been a need, in order to request, additional funding to support this project as time has gone by. And it's also important to note that we worked very closely with NMSU throughout this process in order to ensure that, that the mission of NMDA was in fact met, but also trying to keep the costs as controlled as possible. But I can also defer to NMSU if they have any additional comments regarding cost increases.
No.
Okay, thank you. And I'm glad to say that this happened. I believe, is it in the business department? Where do we currently house our Department of Agriculture administrative offices?
Governor, I'll defer to.
We're in the physical science laboratory,
Okay.
just kind of across the street from where the old building
Okay.
was. Yes, sir.
So this will be good. And I really like as far as the location and where that's at, because I think it identifies with the culture and the whole component of the land grant institution and doing that. So I think there's a great location, great opportunities there. So I look forward to the progress of that. I don't think I have any further questions, but I want to yield to Ashley. After, are there any contingencies that are on this project?
Mr. Chair, no.
I think, yeah, the slide was correct, and it said that in November, 2024, construction will begin. And I'm under the understanding that once it's approved by State Board of Finance, the construction begins. So I think you're okay on that. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. This is a friendly committee, I'll say that.
Seeing no further questions, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion. Moved. I have a motion by Member Han. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Member Cassidy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Congratulations, that action item has been completed, been approved. We'll go on to item number 36. That's going to be approval of capital expenditures for replacement of Thomas Brown Building.
Thank you, Governor. So this is our second big project, second flagship project, the Thomas and Brown Replacement Building. This building again will house classrooms, labs, engineering studies, and faculty offices. This was built in 1972. The current building size is a little over 48,000 square feet. Next.
It's slow.
So a feasibility study that was performed in 2020 identified the need to replace this entire building. Renovation of this existing building was not deemed feasible. The current facility includes inefficient space. It has frequent service outages due to antiquated systems and equipment. And construction of the new building helps fulfill the vision of having a more collaborative space for the entire engineering college. Next slide, please. So the project budget is $30,287,000. This would include the scope of work would include asbestos abatement and demolition of the existing building, rerouting of utilities that feed Goddard Hall, and construction of a 32,000 square foot two-story building. As you can see, the new building will be considerably less square foot space. Installation of furnishings and equipment and moving services. Next slide, please. So again, the design, as far as the project schedule goes, design has begun. We expect construction to start in January and completion of January 2025 and completion of construction in May of 2027. This is a breakdown of our funding sources, a combination of GOBs, general funds, various donor funds, and then PRR. Next slide, please. This is our sequence of approvals, and then November 19th, today, we hope to get approval from the State Board of Finance. The breakdown of our budget, we're happy to get into the details if need be. Next slide, please. And we stand by for questions.
Okay, thank you. Any additional information from members who are joining us?
This has been I was the Dean of the College of Engineering, Governor. We started working on this 2019 planning, and it's been almost a dream come true. this is a facility that is actually taking a lot more money with incremental upgrades and so the donors have come forward at various times, and they helped in more ways than just finances. So we're very happy to present this for your approval.
Thank you, Provost Reddy. Online, we have Interim Dean David Haragi. Would you like to add anything to this, Interim Dean?
Sure. Well, first of all, I thank you, Honorable Chair and Lieutenant Governor Morales, and the rest of the committee for this opportunity. I echo Provost Reddy's comments about the excitement that we have here in the College of Engineering to create multidisciplinary experiential learning experiences for our students. There's a lot of buzz going around this project, and we're ready to get going on it. So thank you so much for this opportunity and the chance to speak to you all about it.
Thank you. Any other information?
Governor, if I may. For this particular project, I think what I'd like to also express to this committee is that this is a good example of a project where you take a larger footprint and you're able to design it in a way that is most efficient. And this is something that as a department, we've been working very closely with higher ed institutions as we talk about taking old square footage down and replacing it with new facilities, just ensuring that we're looking at ways in which we can more efficiently build facilities to be more effective as well, whether it be with classrooms that are more flexible, whether it be with just other design opportunities. And so I just want to applaud NMSU for being able to take down a facility and put up a new facility at a smaller square footage. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any questions or comments from board members?
Congrats on getting private funds involved in this. I noted that in other universities, it seems the engineering school does the best job of raising capital.
So credit to Provost Reddy.
Thank you. Congrats. Thank you so much.
Any further questions or comments?
Governor, this is probably a really silly question. But it seems to me that we in New Mexico have always thought building and demolishing is better than renovating. Downtown Albuquerque, for example. I'm not so sure about Santa Fe, but isn't there some value in the history of buildings and maybe keeping buildings around and renovating them rather than just tearing them down and building? I know the cost. Everybody's going to say the cost, right, of renovating, but is there, I mean, I don't know, coming from where I just came from this weekend, where they renovate all of their old buildings and they're really spectacular type buildings. Maybe we don't have spectacular buildings in New Mexico. I think we do, but just what is the rationale? Just the cost, just simply the cost. Tear it down, get something better, brighter that we'll have to tear down in another 20 years or 30 years instead of, I mean, and in our institutions that have some value, I mean, those buildings through years and years and years. Again, I'm being, I don't know if it's called serendipitous or melancholy, but it's just a thought.
Governor Sanchez, I really appreciate that comment. And that's one of the things that we at the department, have really tried to hone in on over the years. There is great value in reutilizing, revitalizing, and renovating existing buildings. And we always look to institutions to provide us with cost benefit analysis when it comes to renovation versus new construction. We of course have a lot of our facilities that are on the state historic register that we want to ensure that we maintain and keep. And when we renovate them, that they still ensure that they keep that historic significance. There are cases, I'll use this facility as an example, where the cost to renovate this facility would have surpassed the cost to demo and construct new. And so we assess every situation, differently. But we do look at it in not just the cost perspective, but we also look at it in the perspective of best utilization of space. And so I appreciate your comments. That is something that we definitely look at. And we struggle with that at times with certain facilities. But I know that keeping to the historic significance of our campuses is something that we are very in tune with. So thank you.
And Governor and Gerald, the example is different that I'm gonna give you now in terms of it's not higher education, but for instance, in Los Lunas, we have the old hospital and training school, which has some historical value in a lot of different ways and different meanings for different people. We shut it down for a reason, but it has a historical significance to those families whose children or adults were placed there for a number of years. Some good, some bad. But what we're gonna go in and general services is gonna do is demolish most of those buildings. And who knows what they're going to be replaced by, if they're even replaced. And I think, again, it's just me, being me, I guess. Historical significance in New Mexico means a lot to me. And the families that are affected by certain buildings that they have had some association with is important. And we as a state, and not just the state, the cities as well. Again, you know, the cost analysis basis that you just talked about. I think that's overrated sometimes in terms of the historical values that we ought to remember in things, good or bad. Because there's a lot of bad things that people remember about the hospital and training school in Los Lunas, a lot of bad things. But there's also some positive things that happen there. And people are still living who work there, who have family there. There's still a graveyard there, actually. And hopefully that will never be removed or destroyed or whatever they might try to do. But again, I'm glad you at least think about it. And when it's possible to save buildings, I think it's a great way to go. Thank you, Joe.
Governor,
Thank you, Governor.
Member Sanchez, if I may respond.
Absolutely.
You know, there have been some renovations, or should I say some facilities, around the state at higher education institutions where we have saved elements of the existing building and incorporated them into the design of the new facility as well. You know, that's one way that I know we've done that in higher ed, and that has really been a good way to continue the history of what was there. We've also, in some instances, kept certain walls and built around those walls. So there's ways to do it. But I appreciate your comments and it's something that we'll continue to look into as well further.
Thank you, Thank you, Governor.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so appreciative of that comment. Because when we began thinking about this project about 5 years back, our advisory board members were the first team of people who were talking about the historic context, how they learned. Because all of our advisory board members did take classes in that very same building. So in fact, some of them were wanting to take some bricks from that building, and there are all kinds of ideas. But in the end, it came to, and I clearly remember almost half a dozen meetings back in 2020. Here's a huge Thomas and Brown building, and it was built with the notion that we all take classes in a huge classrooms, and it was really not only what the basic building access kind of code was becoming difficult to meet, but it is not serving the purpose of, according to the advisory board members, of the delivery modes that we now need in higher education. Nor with the laboratory space that it was once envisioned, and that happened to be a field which is very dynamic. Electrical and computer engineering department is housed in that building. So there were just so many laboratories that are completely changed, and the space is not serving. So that 42,000 square footage, we all together decided that we really don't need that much. And we don't need, just as many of our campuses are going toward, we don't need huge classrooms as we did need in 1960s and 70s. So, but I truly appreciate this conversation. This was how we got started.
Governor and Member Sanchez, again, I reiterate that this is an extremely important question and very important for all of us to think about. This is intimately tied to our deferred maintenance burden. We can definitely extend the life of a lot of our buildings if we're able to maintain them on schedule, but we struggle because of the deferred maintenance burden that we have. I know you're all aware of this. I just wanted to reiterate that point, that regular maintenance is very, very important. Deferred maintenance in higher ed is a national epidemic. I'm sure we all know that. It's just, I think it's touching $1 trillion now. But again, it's due to resource constraints that we're not able to maintain the buildings that we wish to maintain regularly. I just wanted to throw that out there as appreciative of your concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me ask another question on this. It's noted here that the facility is going to house the computer engineering program, and 12 students are already signed up. What is the capacity of this building in terms of students and the ability to?
Right. The computer engineering program just got started last year. It was approved only last year. Although the department was named electrical and computer engineering for about 3-4 decades, we really did not have computer engineering as a degree. We had it as a minor and a set of courses and certificate and all of that. We have quite a bit of capacity, and I think this new building, although it may sound strange that we reduced it this size, it actually could handle more number of students than the previous building, because we have carefully increased the size of the laboratories, minimized the number of classrooms, because this particular new degree program, computer engineering and the electrical engineering, they rely more on online resources. They're participating quite heavily in multiple delivery modes. So the space is designed to handle about 400 to 500 students on computer engineering. It's just beginning. Our federal labs in the state heavily argued and advocated for that, and they were happy that we just got started. I think in the next, to your question, in the next 4-5 years, we are thinking of getting into the range of 200 or so in the computer engineering alone, which is different from electrical engineering.
So this facility handle just those type of engineers, or is there another building where civil is done and other types of engineering?
So this building is designed to address many of these computer engineering and electrical engineering laboratories. There are 1 or 2 traditional laboratories which are more interdisciplinary between mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and industrial engineering. And they are being located in a different space, which is a lot more convenient for people to team up together. But this new building is specifically designed to address the areas of computer engineering.
And one more, NMSU is known for its engineering programs. How many engineers do you graduate a year?
Graduate in a year? 250.
Thank you.
Can I
We
ask
do
one
more.
question
We
on
want to
that?
do more.
Can I ask one question? Thank you for asking that question, Governor, man. Yeah, absolutely. How many of those graduates stay in New Mexico?
Good question. We just got to the data at this point.
Good.
We have about a third of the New Mexico state graduates staying in New Mexico. But I must say that is for the whole campus. With engineering students, I think the percentage is a bit more, thanks to the fact that Los Alamos, Sandia, and our local defense contractors are heavy recruiters of our engineering students. So that's the answer. But campus-wide, it's about a third. But if I may give one more piece of information, most of our NMSU alum call themselves owner or president. And that is quite different when compared with other universities. So in other words, our entrepreneurship programs that we highly encourage our engineering students to minor in or take certificate programs are reflecting in the fact that our alum go on becoming owners of the industries and the presidents of companies. So we have a fairly good footprint of NMSU skill set in the state of New Mexico.
Since this is primarily set up for that specific engineering, is there a chair set up or anything that will help continue the financing so that you always have the professors and whatnot to?
Yes, thanks for asking that question. In fact, this space was designed to go away from having a very specialty space exclusively for one program. It does have space for what we call active learning. In fact, this is going to be a signature learning space for the whole campus because much of that space is for capstone. The industries in New Mexico are asking for capstone design to bring the real world design problems into classrooms in the fourth year. So this building has space designed for that. So it is, in a sense, an interdisciplinary space on second floor with the laboratories for computer engineering and electrical engineering heavily located on the first floor and part of the second floor. So the answer to your question is it's a very modern interdisciplinary space designed to encourage people coming together, number one. Designed to have industry and student and faculty collaborations also in the same space.
Any further questions, comments?
I guess I have one last one. This doesn't relate to much of anything. Do you all recognize the name of M.G. Martinez? Alumni from New Mexico State?
May I have the last name again?
M.G. Martinez?
Definitely not.
Okay. I was just wondering.
The potential donor?
No. That's the only question I have.
Senator Sanchez. Impressive. I think the information that's been given to us, the thought process of looking at the whole picture, I think is something that is important. And I also think that it brings out a significant point of what needs to happen, not only in universities, not only in New Mexico State, but in the state of New Mexico in general, is really sharing some of the successes and changing the narrative. It's so oftentimes that we can see the social media, through other types of media, that a lot of the focus is on the negative. And just what you presented and be able to share. And I saw it for myself when I go every year to speak at the transportation conference there in New Mexico State. And I see the amount of engineers, the amount of work that's being done that goes right back into our state government and benefits us in the work that we do. That's the narrative we got to share. Our successes, but we still recognize there's areas that we're going to continue to improve. I think that's important. And I can tell how badly you want this passed today by the amount of people that you brought with you. Brought it up to Santa Fe, and especially because you brought in the secret weapon when you bring my childhood friend, Dr. Howdicke, on board too. Davey, so good to see you. Thank you for joining us virtually.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll turn to Ashley for some more information.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just have a technical clarification if I may. So I know in the presentation that you stated the ask was $30,287,000, but the application actually had $30,300,150. Can we get a clarification just before the board takes action on the dollar amount?
We can provide that.
Yes, Lieutenant Governor, Member Leach, that is due to the AIPP, Art in Public Places. In our presentation, we had that included in the budget. But as far as the, in the presentation, it was not included, but in the ask it is.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. Seeing no further discussion, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Approval.
We have a motion for approval, Member Cassidy. We have a second by Member Sharpsani. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Congratulations again. Thank you for joining us. Look forward to the amount of progress that's going to take place with the consent agenda items and the 2 action items. And Gerald, as always, thank you for really help guiding the ship for all of our universities. Thank you for that.
Governor, I do want to emphasize the support, the very positive support that we received from HEB and Director Leach and Deputy Director Trujillo. Without them, we wouldn't be making this progress. So we really appreciate your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that acknowledgement. Well deserved. Thank you.
Wish you well. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving.
We'll go on to the next item. That's going to be emergency funding request. Customers of Lopez Mutual Domestic Water Consumers Association.
Yeah, you're very close to the last.
Actually, I'm just. I'll try to move this to.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Priscilla, Christie, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. What I want to say this morning is I'm back. As always, it's a pleasure to see you all. My name is Priscilla Lucero. I'm the director of the Southwest New Mexico Council of Governments. I have with me Christina Ortiz, which is a USDA Rural Partners Liaison. She's a technical assistance provider, works in my region. She's the designated USDA liaison for my area because we are the designated one of 3 in New Mexico. This is the Rural Partners Network. And then I have with me Bob Livingston, which is the board member. And then we also have Beverly Melo, who is also working on the project and has a lot of the information on the construction of the project because she's actually providing the oversight on that. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob and to Bev, and then we're here to provide any additional support. This is their first time here, so I just want to give them the opportunity to speak. You always hear from me, so I'm going to let them have this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's, thank you for having us. Good morning, Lieutenant Governor and members of the board. And Priscilla already introduced us, but I'm Bob Livingston. I'm member at large on the Cuts Adobe's NBWCA. And with me is Beverly Melo, who is a resident project representative or the inspector. That's a mouthful, but anyway, she's working with us on the USDA funded project, water system improvement project. And both Beverly and myself are former presidents of the association. So we've been with the organization for a while. We serve the Casa Adobe subdivision in Members, which is 26 miles east of Silver City with 140 connections. And we're here today due to a recent emergency where approximately 25 homes lost water service. And that lasted a week. And it was due to a series of lift pump failures. And it also resulted in a boil water order as instructed by the NMED. So at this point, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Beverly, and she'll explain our emergency in greater detail.
Good morning, Lieutenant Governor and members of the board. I appreciate this opportunity to present a request.
Just passed away.
The Casa Adobe has had 5 booster pumps burn up in the last 6 years. However, the booster pump was not included in our professional engineering report. Therefore, it was not included in the USDA $6 million water replacement project. Without the booster pump, the top tank won't fill, and it feeds the top 3 streets in our subdivision, representing roughly 25 residents. Our trouble began on September 5th when the contractor accidentally cut the cable to the automation. The cable was repaired, connections were checked, and everything appeared to be working. Until a week later, when the upper tank didn't fill and the connection was lost from the booster pump to the upper tank. Electricians were called. It was determined that the floats were bad and therefore new floats were needed were ordered and installed. It took some time to get these floats, and in the meantime, communication failed between the main well and the lower tanks. That was September 20th. The lower tanks didn't fill, and they are required to feed the wet well, which houses our booster pump. The wet well ran dry and the booster pump burned up. Because the booster pump was not part of the project, neither the contractor nor the engineer took responsibility for solving this problem. The association called Corey Dalton from Badger Western to come and replace the pump as he had the last 5 times. Only this time it burned out in another day and a half. Coincidentally, within a day or two of installing the pump, Smithco decommissioned the old tank with the dedicated line to the booster pump and hooked up to the new line, which is split between the booster pump station and the distribution line. The new design changed from the original booster pump station design. We now had, instead of a bottom feed tank at the top, we had a top feed tank, which added about 18 feet of elevation. We now had a check valve on the upstream side of the booster pump, which we never had before. And now we had lines coming out of our new tanks that came to a T and split, one to the booster pump and one portion going to our distribution line. It was thought that the check valve was defective. And so we ordered a new pump, we installed it, and it burned out. We wired open the check valve, we ordered another pump, we put it in, and it wouldn't lift the water. So now we decided we needed to order a bigger pump. So we put in a bigger pump, it lifted the water, it filled the tank, the check valve was wired open, everything was working great, and for about a couple of days. And then that too burned out. We had 3 different kinds of shutoffs and motor stops on this, and it burned through all of them. So the last thing we could figure out was that previously we had a dedicated line from the tank to the booster pump station. Only now the line was split between the booster pump and the distribution. So because we were already in a boil water situation and we had people without water for over 7 days, we agreed to have the contractor put in a dedicated line from the tank to the booster pump, and that worked. And to this day, it continues to work. However, the automation still isn't working properly. And so this is, in our minds, a temporary fix. We have a working system, but we also have an operator that is turning on our pumps every day, twice a day, 7 days a week. And we are still trying to resolve the automation system. The automation system also was not brand new. It was just transferred over from the old system. We do not know if there's much potential for burning out yet another pump, but we're hoping not. So this has cost the association around $41,000 to get this pump supplier out, to get all these pumps replaced, and the labor it costs to do it. We are also requesting money for a new booster pump package plant. And we were asked if this was critical, if we needed to, if we couldn't wait and for capital outlay, which at the beginning of this project, we thought the same thing. You know, after this project was completed, we would go out for a new booster pump station. However, we feel that it's pretty critical right now because we still don't know We haven't solved the automation problem, and we don't know how well this booster pump is gonna last us. It is in a wet well, and the wet well is fed by our lower tanks, which is operated on automation. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. With a new booster pump station, the pump will go directly on the fill line. It will be at elevation. We won't need to hire someone with a crane to pull our pump and change it out. We will be at elevation. It'll have two pumps cycling, and we believe that this could be the fix that we need to guarantee that we won't keep burning out pumps.
Thank you for that information. Chris, is there anything you wanted to add from the USDA perspective?
So as a community liaison, I wasn't involved in the funding package, so that's not my area. But I'm here to provide any technical assistance and training that the association needs to ensure compliance with whatever financial regulatory assistance that they need.
Okay, thank you. So any other information you want to present?
Honorable Lieutenant Governor, members of the board, I just want to say, this is one of those circumstances that I think that you all have been dealing with over years. And that is, these are systems that were private systems at one time. This was a private system that became a public system, and it was a privately owned system for many years that went without maintenance. This is one of those systems that had to be taken over in receivership by Public Regulation Commission. Went into receivership, we had to go file a docket. This is how long we've been working on this particular system to bring it into some level. We finally got to that point where we made it a public system. And then we finally get the funding to get to this point, and we finally are making progress, and then here we are again. And so these are the challenges. This is my everyday life in the world that I live every day and have been for many years. And I think the one thing that I just want to articulate to all of you, and I think when I say I'm back, this is the reality of what I'm seeing almost on a daily basis in my work that I do every day, dealing with these systems. And just, I think last time I was here, we were talking about some of the challenges that we're seeing from mutual domestics, and that we're losing our accountants. Yesterday in our region, we were notified that our nonprofit are losing their accountants in our region. So now we do not have accountants for our mutual domestics. Now we don't have accountants for our nonprofits. And so what's next? So this is just a challenge that we're facing in our rural areas, and the saga continues. And it's heartfelt for me, because every day as a council of governments, we try to do our very best. And Christie's an extension of me. I feel that really helps me based on her local government experience with her accounting record. It helps me to help with the pieces that I can. I can find and secure the funding, but she's got the accounting background that helps me bring them into compliance, and it continues. So these are things that I'm always looking for ways to, how do we assist them to make things better for them. But this is just one more example. So thank you for the opportunity just to share that. And those are things that we'll continue to do to help support them, because that is our basic need.
Thank you for that, Priscilla. If there's no further information, I'll go ahead and yield to board members to ask questions. Member Tripsatter?
Thank you, Governor. Thank you very much for the presentation. Obviously, a huge proponent of everyone having access to water, always without having to boil it, and readily available. So I'm definitely an advocate for that. And I'm not going to pretend to understand all the technicalities that you're describing about boosters and pumps and automation. But my, I guess, question is with the, it sounds like extensive burnout. They were all burning out. Is that because of the lack of automation? Is that because of overuse? It didn't sound like it was necessarily related to wear and tear and age, because it sounds like you got a new pump that failed too. do you need more? Like, is it a matter of quantity? Is it just a matter of quality and getting a better system in place?
Lieutenant Governor and board member
Trevisani.
Um, The booster pump system is 30 years old.
Yeah.
It's actually retrofitted to this brand new project. And again, the problem with it is that it's been left up to the association to figure out why all of this is happening. And, we did it through a process of elimination with the different, changes to the design. But we still don't know that the wet well system is the best system for this project, the way it's been designed and now is in place.
Do you have engineers and people coming in and evaluating and giving you kind of a plan or out for bid or something to ensure that they have
For
something?
the new package plant system, yes. Yes, that will, because, we did get a quote and it was over the 60,000 for, procurement. So it's gonna have to get engineered, go out for bid and the whole 9 yards, so it's costing quite a bit more.
Okay, well, good luck. And then I have one more question, Governor, if I may. So while it was an accident, the contractor that cut the cable, is there no kind of recourse or is there anything that comes from, was it a company, was it an independent person? Do they have insurance? Is there some sort of repercussion that happens? And I'm not sure what extent of the damage and the issues is related to that. But is that not?
It's, I don't think that has actually been troubleshot, because again, it's not up to the contractor, it's not up to the engineer, it's up to the association. And the association just responded to the issue. But I consider it like if the contractor was cutting through an electric cable to put in their water line, they'd call the, electric company to repair it. And it was the same way, they cut through the automation cable, so they called the company that originally installed the automation, and they came out and they put in a brand new cable, and they checked all the connections, everything was working. So now we have, then the electricians determined that our floats were bad, and so we replaced the floats. It's just been a series of what now? And we're not sure. Because the association just doesn't have the expertise themselves.
So Honorable Lieutenant Governor and Member Tersani. So just to explain a little more, and this is what happens and where leadership is so important, right? And this is what happens when leadership changes. So at the time that the preliminary engineering report was being developed, the part that they're dealing with was not included as a PR in the preliminary engineering report, was because at that time, that leadership chose not to include it. Which, in my opinion, should have been. Because if you're going to look at the rehabilitation of an entire system that wasn't taken care of for over 30 years, you should have looked at the entire thing. But a lot of times, we're not in those discussions, for example, or leadership comes and says, well, we don't really need that, we don't need to worry about that. And then this is what happens over time, right? So that piece wasn't included, and now we're having all these things where they're not connecting and there's that lack of automation, right? So that's part of the challenge, and we see these things and time after time where I'm seeing some of that, where that happens and that occurs. And so I wish that we would have more time to be in those discussions with them, and even in our best attempt to say that's not the best decision. If they want to go a different direction because that's what they chose as a board, sometimes our hands are tied, right? And so that's kind of what I feel happened in this sense, is that we tried everything to make sure that they followed everything that should have been included and it wasn't. Unfortunately, that's kind of where we are today. If that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kind of the same one, I was gonna ask the same question.
do we get certificates of insurance of the people that come out to do the thing? Cause it seems to me like if the contractor cut the line, then that would have been turned into his insurance, which, and any ensuing damage would have gone under that too, meaning that if it was the line that cut, then if there was any further damage that happened because of the line being cut, should have been paid for by the contractor.
My understanding, Member Lujan, is that in my conversations with the engineer is that those costs were covered. As far as from the cable being cut, were covered by the company, from my research. So that portion was, but nothing else beyond that was covered. Cause this seems to be more of, that was now an association issue, because that was not tied into the USDA issue or to the USDA funding. USDA has very specific rules in their agreement that says only what can be covered based on that funding is what's included in the preliminary engineering report. And they're very specific about that. So if it's not included, then you have to go back and revise the whole PER again, which costs additional money for the association, which they don't have. Then we have to go secure more money for them. Then it prolongs the project. Then it costs more money. We have to find more money to secure it. It prolongs the project and then increases the cost again. And these are the challenges that we face in some of these communities. So that's where it becomes a challenge.
I guess I'm confused on the claim, because are you saying that you have to go to USDA to get approval to turn in a claim?
No, because it was part of when they were doing that portion, that's where the cable was cut. And that was taken care of through the contractor, and that's the portion that was being done from the construction project from USDA. But then this affected, which is now the booster pump and this portion that is not being covered by USDA. Right, did I get that correct?
But there, his question is the association gonna assess the contractor any fees for the burned out pumps? And all the work after replacement of the cable, even though they replace the cable, but what's the determination on all these issues afterwards? How are they tied to the cable, or are they tied to that cut cable? And is the association gonna recover or recoup any of those fees due to the cut cable?
If I might just briefly, I think he's asking whether or not you could hire a lawyer to file a lawsuit. to get Reimbursed for what the damage.
The clarification.
Whether there has been damage to the facility itself based on.
Or if claim was even turned in, has the insurance company denied it, or are they, or?
I just know from what the engineers told me is that they have just covered the cost of the cable being replaced.
Member Lohan, you still have the floor.
Then the other thing is, just as we have in the past, is the association doing any kind of assessment to the members to help up, some of the costs, or is in the rates, or what's the participation level of this association and some of the costs of it?
Yeah, so Mr. Chair and Member Lujan, is that anytime that you receive federal funding from USDA, they require that you do a rate analysis through Rural Community Assistance Corporation to incorporate a rate analysis to secure, number one, that you have funds to cover the short-lived assets embedded into your budget for any future emergency. Second of all, they also require that you have enough money being brought into your budget for the purposes of paying the portion of the loan. So when you have a USDA award, USDA on the federal side requires that you incur the loan first before you incur the debt, the grant portion. So Christy can probably talk a little bit more about it, because she's been working on the financial piece.
So rate analysis was completed in August of 2023, which incurred a rate increase, which is, from what I recall, was gonna be effective for partial year of fiscal year 24. So they did their rate increases, right, for the project because of those expenses. The association financially doesn't have enough in reserves to cover larger expenditures like this 40,000 that they had come up with the burned out pumps. I am working with them to develop their budget, get it to DFA, get it all approved. They internally had approved their budget back in January, because they're on the calendar year. So that was internally. So now they're just coming in compliance with DFA reporting, right? So we're working on that. On my analysis, we're gonna go ahead and request a new rate analysis to be conducted to deal with some of the changes, they say, that have come up since they started making payment on their loan to USDA. What I've seen is some of the costs could have been absorbed by the association if they didn't have to pay or start repaying that debt once the conditions of the grant with USDA or grant loan were completed. So they've been paying on their loan already at a little over $3,000 a month since January, and the project isn't even completed. So that's, I think, were some of the issues that have risen, that they weren't really fully understanding of what had to be done. So they were paying, so they've already paid, what, $30,000, which that money could have been used to help us, you know, with this issue that they had. So we'll be reevaluating all of those rates that they have for their system and their debt capacities and reserves, and get them back on the straight path.
Member Lamont. Member Cassidy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm gonna go through just a couple quick questions, but we could do. So you're current at all current obligations. Is that a fair statement? And then secondly, where did the $41,000 of cash come from that has been advanced as part of all these happenings? Is that current cash of the?
No, it is a debt that we owe to the pump supplier.
So you're not current in payment of obligations?
None of it.
I see. So we're not reimbursing, the request is not to reimburse capital expenditures paid for yet. I noted that your debt service coverage chart, thank you for having that, it's negative. And I noted that there's no debt service expenses included in the financials for the 3 years that were included. Will the rate study rectify that? And then are your rate payers willing to pay the higher rates that it's gonna take to not only get current, right-size the budget, as well as provide for reserves that you're gonna need to provide? I think USDA probably has a reserve requirement.
Yes.
So I mean, is there a willingness of ratepayers to do that?
Chairman and Member Cassidy, when we took on this USDA project, we agreed that we would have rate increases. And I believe we've had 2 so far, and I think we are due for another one in January. The RCAC helped us to determine what those rates would be. The problem with our savings, or whatever the term is for that, is we've had to replace all these pumps along the way.
Right.
And that's cost the association. Plus, when the contractor started working, the lines are so old and so fragile that even though the contractor might have started working here, it would cause a leak here. And we would have to call out someone to fix another leak. And I believe we fixed over 10 leaks since the contract started, at roughly $1,500 a leak. So all these combined has really
Yeah.
diminished our savings.
What I'm hearing, if I could, Mr. Chairman, you're gonna invest $452,000 in the system, but there's still gonna be things coming up. It's an old system. So how, are you gonna go back to the legislature for
Yes.
additional capital outlay to
We're hoping,
backed by engineering work?
we're hoping to go. Theoretically, we were hoping this booster pump would last until we could go out for capital outlay. We also want to go out for, a new SCADA system. And,
Okay,
but we didn't make it.
I got it. So, I'll get it back to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Member Cassidy. I guess my question to you is, how long has this association been in? How long have you had it? Public or private?
Mr. Chairman and Member Sanchez, we started in 2016. We took over from it was a subdivision in the water system. It was, we took it over, we formed the NDWCA along with Priscilla's Hill. We wrote the bylaws and the articles of incorporation. And so it's been 8 years. So.
Yeah,
And
it
in that
seems,
time, we've gotten colonious funding to help with the food tank. And then additional capital outlay for that. And we also got capital outlay for the purchase of a backhoe. And that is to where it's really helped us with the old leak repairs, because the old backhoe that was available was just old and the owner took it back, so.
And Mr. Chair and members of the board, we also had to go to colonious funding to purchase, the water rights, for the system. Cause that was one of our very first things, because that was what was the outcome of the mediation that occurred between the Public Regulation Commission and the private owner, which was the heirs of the deceased owner.
so it seems to me that, I mean, we've had a lot of these. I mean, just one after the other that has come before us. Who regulates in the state? I mean, is there any type of regulation for maintenance, for example? I mean, when does the maintenance begin? How often does it happen? So that we don't run into the type of problem that you're expressing and other associations have expressed as well. I mean, is there?
So, Mr. Chair, members of the board, that is the problem when it comes to the private systems, right? And so I get a lot of calls from private systems now that want to become public. And what I can tell you most recently, what I found is that in the most recent one that became a public system, is my understanding is that there was a moratorium put under the Sanitary Projects Act, that there was a moratorium in the year 2000, so that there's probably not any more that we can create. And the last one we were able to create was because there was already a nonprofit. So that's something that I want to research a little more, because that could be an issue, because if you look at all the systems in the state, which exceeds, I think, 1,000 systems, I think 300 of those are what we call political subdivisions of the state. The rest of them are private. And so I'm a little concerned, and that's one of the reasons I think it's so important to look at ways we can regionalize these systems, and so we need to do better of how we maintain them. And then we have more regulations like copper and lead. How do we make sure of this? And so I don't think anybody really knows how they're doing that with, at least from my personal opinion, unless you're part of a membership like New Mexico Rural Water that maybe have their circuit riders that come and visit them, but.
The chairman, member Sanchez. So one of the other options or components of having your water systems go through lenders or funders like USDA is at the outcome of their project. One document that is usually required. I haven't seen what they have, but they're typically the water systems are required to have a operations and maintenance manual provided at on the finishing end of their system, so that they can help them maintain, provide them with instructions on the life cycle of whatever component it is, and just do their general operations and planning from that, so.
And how often are those manuals complied with? It just seems to me that,
I agree.
just seems to me, and I'll get to you in a minute, it just seems to me that this may be a legislative issue that needs to be addressed in terms of private and public systems. So that if a private system is having problems, all of a sudden they want to be public so that they can request funding from state sources and resources. Again, Member Trevisani said it best, we don't want people to not have water and clean water. Make sure everybody has safe drinking water and doesn't have to boil their water and stuff. It just seems to me that, I don't know who you would talk to in the legislature, but it seems to me that that should be an issue for the more rural counties and those representatives and senators from the rural counties to draft some type of legislation with your all's help. They can't do it on their own because they don't know.
Mr. Chair, just
as
so
much
you
as they
know,
think
I
they do something.
on a committee at the state level on the Water Ambassador Group who's drafting legislation to look at ways to improve these processes in many different
It
ways.
seems to me that both of you should be very instrumental in assisting them in terms of getting it right instead of just something, a quick fix or a Band-Aid. No,
You're talking a lot of years of experience here.
Bad.
Thank you for that.
And you know, I suspect you're gonna get what you're asking for today, but it just has come up way too often and something has to be done one way or the other. It just has to. I'm not big on regulations, but it just seems that
Well,
this needs to be addressed at some point.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the board, if you look at what we've been talking about in that committee itself, is that because of some of the changes that are occurring on the geographic underground is changing. It's changing the contaminants of the water.
Sure.
And I can just tell you in my area, we're seeing high fluoride levels, arsenic levels, uranium levels, high nitrate levels. That's just in my region. I don't even know what's going on in the other regions. And I'm saying like, this is not what we used to see before. We might have high fluoride levels. That was common. But now we have all these other contaminants that we're dealing with. And it's pretty exhausting, just trying to figure out how we're gonna resolve all that. And then we hear about all the wells going dry. And nobody's keeping the data on that. And yet I've seen those issues where we're talking about senior citizens going and don't have a way to even lift a pail of water to provide water for themselves. So the challenges are great. And so we just gotta keep going.
Well, it definitely needs to be addressed.
I agree.
And with your help to the legislature, the governor's office, hopefully we can get it done. But it's not gonna be a quick process, you know that.
I sure do.
Any last word?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, in reference to Mr. Member Cassidy's previous question, he asked, how did your membership feel about these rate increases? Well, I recall specifically being at a meeting, I think it was April of 23, and when we were presented by the RCAC with these rate increases, the members present were really overwhelmingly in favor of those at that time. Now, I can't speak for the future, but at that time they were, and there were three rate formulas presented to us. And the most restrictive one, the highest one that would cost the members the most, they understood the problem and they said, look, go for it, do this. It was called option 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ashley, you have anything further?
Mr. Chair and members, I would just note that, on page, let me get this right, because there's a lot of pages, 1,413, council has drafted a resolution, reflecting a grant in the total amount requested by, the Water Association. I would note that this, request qualifies for both emergency funds, so both the drinking water as well as the operating. So we are splitting the grant up so that a portion will come from the drinking water fund and a portion will come from the emergency fund if approved. So it will expend the full drinking water emergency fund and then take the remaining out of the emergency operating fund. So just some technical details there, but that is how the resolution is drafted. Council, I don't know if they have anything else to mention.
I do not.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. With that, do we have a motion on item number 35? We have a motion to approve item number 35 with all the contingencies that Ashley just described to us. Is there a second? Second by member Cassidy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed?
Mr. Chair, can we have a follow-up report back? And Ashley and Marcus, I know you always report back to us informally, but maybe formally about where we are. And also, can we request the Water Association produce financials so we can see those? Because these are really stale and they're agreed upon procedures, not audits. And I assume so an audit's required in this entity.
That's good.
And I'm concerned that the rate increase is going to be sufficient to cover the obligations of the entities. Is where.
Mr. Chair, we certainly provide you that.
Mayor.
Does the council of government oversee all of these?
Yes. So
you have all the data?
So we do. I mean, I work very closely with them, and so with Christy's help, she helps me with the financial piece. And so, again, what we're struggling with is that we lost the CPA that was doing all the books. That's part of the transition. So now we're trying to find the bookkeeper to do that. So now she's helping them kind of get back in check. These mutual domestics are having to go as far as Las Cruces. They're saturated now in Las Cruces. We're trying to figure out another way to do this and see if we can maybe through either my office, hire somebody to come help me with that, would help them. So that's the challenge what we're dealing with there as well. So Christy can help in the meantime, but it's gonna be more, that's a short term versus a long term.
And are these the only ones that you know about? Are there others that you are not aware of that are in different places that?
Oh, let me tell you, they all come to me and I'm dealing with quite a few. I had some, we have another one right now that's 7 years behind on their audits. We have others that are 4 years behind on their audits. I do all their capital improvement plans for them. The accountants were doing the bookkeeping. I wasn't even dealing with that. Now, I don't know what we're gonna do there, but.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for what you do. We appreciate it. We
No, we
appreciate it
want to
very
thank
much.
you for just being so supportive and understanding. And for Ashley and Marcos just doing and extending out and just really just honing in on what it is. And sometimes for us, just daily trying to just get the information out there. And sometimes I apologize for not representing it correctly. And then thank you, Ashley, for just being so gracious.
Well, they're the best, for sure.
They are.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And our other staff, the best.
Yeah, so you came to a great place. So,
But that, thank you.
thank you
We appreciate your time.
very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Okay, Ashley,
All right.
item number 36.
I think, Chairman, we are on items 38 and 39,
Did
so,
we already get
yeah,
that?
we're even further along than we- So, so I'm gonna close it out today.
Close it out.
So Chairman, sometimes members of the board, on page 1536, and 1597 of your electronic books, we have, really the public records from our public hearing held on November 2nd for the two rules that staff and council have been working on for the repeal and replacement of, two of the board's main rules. The first, so I will start with item 38. Chairman, this is a request, for approval of the, repeal and replacement of NMAC, and I'm sorry, because I don't have the right screen up here. Here. Thank you, sorry. NMAC 2.70.4, and it's the policy on capital expenditures by state educational institutions. Again, the exhibits in your board packets include all the notices that were provided for the public hearing and the repeal and replacement, a copy of the proposed rule, clean copy, and public comment. For item number 38, so the policy on capital expenditures, we did receive one public comment. It's on page 1591 from the University of New Mexico in support of the proposed changes to the rule. I'll just give a brief summary, since we haven't looked at this in a while, of what the changes were to the rule.
Please.
Before the board takes action. So for this rule, the main changes really are increases to the threshold amounts for a remodeling project that's considered major by a higher educational institution to reflect inflationary changes, since those thresholds were originally established in 1989. Those thresholds have all been increased by approximately 30%. Another major change to this rule is the inclusion of a definition of major for a remodeling project. So that definition will exclude equipment costs. And then we also have a definition for remodel, renovation, and repair to provide further guidance and clear parameters on what must be approved by the State Board of Finance. In section 21-1-21 of MSA 1978, it stipulates that the board must approve the purchase of real property or the construction of buildings or other major structures or for major remodeling. And major remodeling was the definition we really wanted to hone in on. So we have, because we didn't have a definition for that in the rule. So as you notice, we've been seeing roof replacements or, movement of a wall and, to accommodate an MRA machine and that kind of thing, which we, in looking back and evaluating the statute with council, we felt it needed to be defined to provide further direction, because a roof isn't necessarily a major remodel. And in researching that, we did identify that would be the case. So we do now have a definition for remodel, renovation, and repair in the rule, so that we can better determine which projects fit a major remodeling project and not just simply maybe a repair or rehab. It also updates the requirements related to a current title binder for real property acquisitions, because the rule does govern real property acquisitions by higher education institutions to reflect current rules on title binders. It refines the requirements related to complying with the Executive Order 2006-001 on energy efficiency green building standards. So as you all know, part of the requirements when higher education institutions come forward for capital expenditures requests, they have to evidence that they are putting in green building measures, and in some cases for larger projects, designing to LEED Silver specifications. So that has not changed, but what we have done is there is a representative on the Higher Education Department's Capital Outlay Committee from the Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department. And that department and that individual really reviews the green building standards. Since staff and council aren't experts on that, we are now, through this rule change, going to have them, I don't know if certifying is too harsh of a word or too strong of a word, but they will be providing to the board evidence that they reviewed the green building features of each capital expenditure project and certifying that they meet that executive order. So it's kind of like how the TRD reviews our, reviews the appraisals. It's just some additional external expertise to give us and the board comfort when we're looking at something that we're not necessarily an expert in. So it does require that they contest or confirm compliance with all commercial energy conservation requirements as well. So that was an expansion on the green building piece. I'm happy to go into any details like on the increase to thresholds if you'd like, Chairman or members, but that is the rule changes in a nutshell. Like I said, we received the one public comment. And for this rule and item number 39, if approved, staff will work with council to submit this to the New Mexico Register. I think the deadline for the next publication is the 22nd, so just in a few days. If we can make that deadline, we could have this repealed and replaced rule enacted and ready to go by December 10th. And with that, Chairman, I'll stand for.
Questions or comments? Here's none.
Yes, so this is an action item, Mr. Chair, so,
With that, do we have a motion to approve action item number 38? We have a motion to approve by member Lujan, a second by member Trevisani.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Good, just a motion to adopt the proposed rule, so for the
Motion
record.
to adopt. By member Lujan, a second by member Trevisani. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 39.
Yes, Chairman,
I still feel uncomfortable just about the ayes.
yeah, it's a little weird. So item number 39 is similar, a little bit shorter. So this is, we're requesting adoption of the proposed repeal and replacement of State Board of Finance NMAC 1.5.23, real property acquisition, sales, trades, or leases. One thing that I wanted to note, Chairman, is that the red line that we've established does remove reference to the donation of real property. And that was what was considered at the public hearing. We did not receive any comments. That public hearing was also held on November 2nd, and you have the public record in your board books. But I do know that in conversations with you, Chairman, and other members of the Rule Subcommittee, I believe there was a potential desire to retain donation within the rules so that donations between public entities would still come to the Board of Finance for approval. So I wanted to point that out and remind the subcommittee of that discussion because we had already posted the notification for the rule. So we didn't want to change it after that occurred, but the board is able to make that change today prior to approving or prior to adopting this repeal and replacement of the rule. Other changes are very minor for this rule. We updated the requirements related to current title binders, so the same that were done for the HED rule. And then it includes classification on the requirements for, or excuse me, includes clarification on the requirements for approval of real property sales in the event a state agency is selling property within a community land grant. There is a particular statute that addresses that we have now referenced in this rule. So any entity that is, moving forward with a property transaction in that instance has some further clarification on statutory requirements. It also includes some other minor revisions and changes on a much less substantive nature, requiring some documents to be provided to staff for consideration. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any questions, but again, did want to point out that donation.
Yeah, questions or comments by committee members? I would feel comfortable having that in the rule. I don't know about other members, but I think that's important to have that in there and come before the board.
So if you'd like to keep that in, you just need to make a motion to amend to keep that part in. It's within the scope of the notice of the rulemaking, so you can just go ahead and amend it to just keep the donation part in, but adopt it with that.
Okay, so I would so move to amend to keep the donations. Is there a second? Second by member Cassidy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? None. With that, let's go to do we have a motion we have a motion to adopt item number 39 as amended. Member Trevisani, motion, move to adopt the proposed repeal and replacement. Member Lujan, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm
Okay,
not opposed. But
and you didn't have as many as you thought might be at the meeting, that's
no,
interesting.
we will have other rule changes coming up that will have much more public input.
That, I guess there's a motion to adjourn. Somehow, by member Lujan, second by member Trevisani, who's smiling and we're ready to go.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And again, thank you all for all the work you all do. We really appreciate it more than you know.
Thanks.
Bye.